My mother-in-law poured something strange into my drink when she thought I wasn't looking. "Special cocktail for my favorite son-in-law," she said with a smile. I thanked her and discreetly switched glasses with her husband, who always criticized my career. 30 minutes later, what happened left everyone speechless. My name is Daniel Parker, 34 years old, a professional photographer specializing in wildlife and nature. I've built my career from the ground up over the last decade, getting my work published in National Geographic and other prestigious magazines. I met my wife, Laura, 6 years ago at an art gallery featuring my work. She was finishing her master's degree in environmental science, and we connected instantly over our shared love of nature. 2 years later, we were married, and I became part of the Mitchell family. From day one, Laura's parents made it clear I wasn't what they had envisioned for their daughter. Robert Mitchell, my father-in-law, is a successful investment banker who measures success in square footage and stock portfolios. When introducing me, he always calls me the photographer, with a tone that suggests I'm unemployed. Barbara Mitchell, my mother-in-law, is more subtle but equally disapproving. Her specialty is backhanded compliments. "Your photos are so creative, Daniel. It must be nice to have such a fun hobby while Laura supports you both." No matter how many times Laura corrects her that my income is actually higher than hers, Barbara conveniently forgets by the next family gathering. Have you ever felt like no matter what you achieve, some people will never see your value? Last Sunday was Robert's 65th birthday. Laura insisted we couldn't miss the celebration, even though I had just returned from a week-long assignment in Montana. I was exhausted but agreed to go for her sake. The evening started like all Mitchell family gatherings, Robert talking about investments, Barbara micromanaging the catering staff, and Laura's brother Mark and his wife Vanessa making polite conversation while their children played upstairs. After the main course, Barbara announced she had prepared her famous special sangria for dessert. I offered to help carry the glasses from the kitchen, mostly to escape Robert's lecture about 401ks. That's when I saw it. In the kitchen, Barbara had separated 2 glasses from the others. As I entered, she quickly added something from a small vial into one of them. It wasn't a garnish. The liquid was clear and left no color as it dissolved. She quickly tucked the vial into her pocket when she heard me. "Oh, Daniel," she said with artificial brightness. "I've got this. This one's specially prepared for you." My throat tightened as I noticed a barely perceptible film floating on top of the liquid, catching the light in an unusual way. "Let me help you carry these," I insisted, taking both glasses she had prepared. In the dining room, Robert was checking his phone, barely looking up as I approached. "Your drink, sir," I said, placing the tampered glass in front of him instead of taking it myself. I quickly made an excuse about preferring water with my dessert. 45 minutes later, Robert was sweating profusely, his face pale, and he suddenly bolted from the table to the bathroom. The violent sounds of his illness echoed throughout the house. Barbara's face drained of color when she realized what had happened. Her eyes met mine across the table, and I knew with absolute certainty that my mother-in-law had tried to drug me, and she knew that I knew. I didn't react or confront her. I just quietly ate my cake while Laura rushed to check on her father. Have you ever caught someone in the act of betrayal but decided to wait for the right moment to address it? As Robert was being helped to bed by Mark, claiming it must have been bad shellfish, despite none being served, I drove Laura home in silence. I couldn't tell her what I'd seen yet. I needed proof. The next morning, I called Michael, a former client who ran a toxicology lab. "I need a favor," I explained. 3 days later, Michael called back. "Daniel, the residue in that glass contained benzodiazepines, enough to knock someone out for hours. Where did you get this?" I thanked him and asked for a written report. Over the next 2 weeks, I began my investigation. First, I discovered Barbara had prescriptions for Xanax from 3 different doctors. Then I learned something more disturbing. Barbara had a history of strange incidents in her community. At her country club, a member's jewelry had disappeared during an event Barbara organized. At a neighbor's party, a guest had become mysteriously ill after Barbara insisted on refreshing their drink. Most importantly, I found out that Barbara had driven away Laura's previous fiancé, Thomas. After a family dinner where Barbara had prepared something special for him, he'd become disoriented and made a scene. The next day, Barbara had found explicit messages between Thomas and another woman on his phone. Laura had broken off the engagement immediately. Through careful questioning, I learned from Vanessa that Mark's first girlfriend had suddenly developed erratic behavior at a family function. Barbara had helpfully suggested she might have a drug problem. I needed more evidence, so I set up a plan. I told Laura I would take professional portraits of her parents as an anniversary gift. When I arrived at their house with my camera equipment, I had a small recording device hidden in my camera bag. Did you ever have to gather evidence against someone who was deliberately trying to harm you? I set up my equipment in the Mitchells' living room. Robert was at golf, so it was just Barbara and me. Before starting the shoot, I casually mentioned, "I've been meaning to ask you about that special sangria recipe. It had quite an effect on Robert." Barbara stiffened. "It was nothing special, just fruit and wine." "Really?" "Because the lab results showed significant amounts of benzodiazepines in the glass." Her face went pale. "What are you talking about?" I placed the toxicology report on the coffee table. "I took the glass, Barbara. I had it tested. I know you tried to drug me." "That's ridiculous," she sputtered. "You're making things up." "We both know that's not true," I said calmly. "I saw you add something from a vial to my drink. The question is why? Was it just to make me look foolish at dinner? Or was it something more, like what you did to Thomas?" Her expression changed instantly. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Actually, I do. I know about Thomas and how you planted fake messages after drugging him. I know about Mark's girlfriend from college and the missing jewelry at the country club." Barbara's face hardened with rage. "You think you're so clever? You're not good enough for my daughter? A real man would provide security, not pictures." "And drugging your daughter's husband provides security?" "It wasn't going to hurt you," she snapped. "Just make you sick, make you miss that gallery opening. Show Laura that you're unreliable, that your career is a joke." I let her words hang in the air, the recording device capturing everything. "Here's what happens next," I said finally. "You're going to tell Robert what you did. Then you're both going to start treating me with respect, not because you've suddenly changed your minds about me, but because the alternative is Laura finding out exactly who her parents are." Barbara laughed, but it sounded hollow. "She'll never believe you over us." I picked up my camera bag. "Maybe not, but she'll believe the lab report, the prescription records, and your own words I just recorded." That night, Barbara called Laura in tears, claiming I'd behaved inappropriately during our session. When Laura confronted me, I showed her everything: the lab report, the recording, the pattern of behavior. Laura was devastated. The next day, she confronted her parents. When she returned home, her eyes were red from crying. "My father says it's all a misunderstanding," she said quietly, "that you're trying to drive a wedge between us." I just asked, "What do you think?" The next morning, I received an unexpected text from Vanessa. "We need to talk. Meet me at Riverside Cafe at 2. When I arrived, she looked nervous. "I believe you. Barbara did the same thing to me when I first started dating Mark. I never told anyone because I thought no one would believe me." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I found something you should see." She slid a USB drive across the table. "Security camera footage from the Mitchells' house. It shows Barbara in the kitchen with your drinks." That evening, I showed the video to Laura. She watched in silence, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I should have believed you immediately." 3 months passed without contact from the Mitchells. Then Robert called me directly. "Can we meet?" he asked, his voice subdued. We met at a coffee shop. Robert looked older, the confident banker replaced by a tired man. "Barbara's in therapy," he said without preamble. "I owe you an apology. I enabled her behavior for years because it was easier than confronting it. I judged you unfairly from the moment we met." "What do you want, Robert?" "A chance to rebuild our relationship with both you and Laura. We miss our daughter, but we understand why she needed space." I considered his words carefully. "That's not my decision to make. It's Laura's. But if she's willing to try, I won't stand in the way." "Have you ever had to set boundaries with difficult in-laws to protect your marriage?" A week after my meeting with Robert, Laura and I sat in our living room discussing whether we should reconnect with her parents. She was conflicted, torn between her love for them and the terrible truth of what her mother had done. "What do you think we should do?" she asked, her eyes searching mine for guidance. "I think everyone deserves a second chance," I replied carefully. "But real change has to come first. Your mother needs to take responsibility, not just apologize because she got caught." Laura nodded slowly. "I miss them, but I'm afraid of falling back into old patterns. After much discussion, we decided to meet them on neutral ground, a restaurant downtown where we could leave if things went poorly. The dinner was tense at first. Barbara looked thinner, more fragile somehow. Robert seemed to have aged years in just a few months. "Thank you for agreeing to see us," Barbara began, her voice quiet. "I know I don't deserve it." It was the first time I'd ever heard her acknowledge wrongdoing without qualification. "I've been working with my therapist to understand why I did what I did," she continued. "It doesn't excuse my behavior, but I've learned that I have serious control issues stemming from my own childhood. My parents were extremely rigid and judgmental. I internalized that and became exactly like them." "I was so afraid of you taking Laura away from us," Barbara said, looking at me directly. "I convinced myself you weren't good enough because you didn't fit the narrow definition of success I'd been raised to value. But the truth is, I was terrified of losing my daughter. Have you ever witnessed someone's genuine moment of self-reflection and change? That dinner was just the beginning of a long process. We agreed to family therapy sessions with a specialist in family dynamics. Dr. Levine was a no-nonsense woman who didn't allow anyone to hide behind excuses. "Barbara," she said in our third session, "I need you to articulate exactly what you did to Daniel without minimizing or justifying it." Barbara took a deep breath. "I put benzodiazepines in Daniel's drink with the intention of making him ill so he would miss an important gallery opening. I wanted to make him look unreliable to Laura. I've done similar things in the past to others who threatened my sense of control over my family. And why was this wrong?" Dr. Levine pressed. "It was a violation of trust, a form of assault, and a manipulation of my daughter's life. I was trying to sabotage her marriage because of my own insecurities. Over the next few months, we established clear boundaries. We would see the Mitchells only once every 2 weeks. Barbara would continue her therapy, and Robert would also begin sessions to address his enabling behavior. Any violation of trust would result in an immediate break in contact. Progress was slow and uneven. There were setbacks, like when Barbara tried to pressure Laura into spending Christmas at their house. But unlike before, Robert stepped in. "Barbara, we agreed that Laura and Daniel would make their own decisions about holidays. We're seeing them the weekend after Christmas, and that's enough." It was a small moment, but significant. For the first time, Robert was holding his wife accountable instead of enabling her controlling behavior. Would you be able to forgive someone who tried to harm you if they showed genuine remorse and made real changes? 6 months into our reconciliation process, Laura came to me with unexpected news. "I'm pregnant," she said, her eyes shining with a mixture of joy and apprehension. We decided to tell her parents during our next therapy session, where Dr. Levine could help manage reactions. "We're having a baby," Laura announced, her hand protectively over her still flat stomach. Barbara's eyes widened, and for a moment, I tensed, anticipating the old controlling behavior. Instead, tears filled her eyes. "I'm so happy for you both," she said softly. "And I want you to know that I understand this is your child, not mine. I will respect whatever parenting decisions you make." Robert nodded in agreement. "We're here to support, not to take over." After the session, Robert pulled me aside. "Daniel, I want you to know something. I've set up a college fund for the baby, but I've structured it so that you and Laura have complete control, no strings attached. It's not an attempt to buy influence, just a gift." It was a significant gesture, financial assistance without the control that typically came with Mitchell family money. Have you noticed how the birth of a child often creates an opportunity for family relationships to be redefined? As Laura's pregnancy progressed, Barbara remained surprisingly respectful of our boundaries. She asked before buying baby items, checked with us before planning a shower, and even deferred to Laura's wishes about who would be in the delivery room. The real test came when Emma was born, a beautiful baby girl with Laura's eyes and my dark hair. The Mitchells came to the hospital the day after the birth, bearing modest gifts. Barbara approached the bassinet cautiously. "May I?" she asked before reaching for the baby. What surprised me most was when visiting hours were ending. Without being asked, Barbara handed Emma back to Laura. "We'll come back tomorrow if that's okay with you. You three need rest and time together. No arguments, no attempts to stay longer, no unsolicited advice, just respect for our new family." In the weeks that followed, Barbara proved herself to be a different kind of grandmother than she had been a mother. She called before visiting, never overstayed her welcome, and supported Laura's decisions. One afternoon, while Laura was napping and I was holding Emma, Barbara said something unexpected. "You're a wonderful father, Daniel," she said quietly. "I was so wrong about you. Your career, your values, everything. I'm grateful every day that you didn't give up on our family, despite what I did." I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation, but found none. "Thank you, Barbara. That means a lot." "I have something for you," she said, pulling an envelope from her purse. Inside was a newspaper article from a prominent art magazine featuring my latest wildlife exhibition. Barbara had it professionally framed. "Robert and I attended the showing last month. We didn't tell you because we didn't want to make it about us. But your work is extraordinary, Daniel. The way you capture those moments in nature, it's not just photography, it's art." Coming from Barbara, who had dismissed my career for years, it was perhaps the most sincere compliment he'd ever received. Can meaningful change and growth happen even in the most damaged relationships? As Emma's first birthday approached, our relationship with the Mitchells had transformed into something I never thought possible. Not perfect, but fundamentally healthier. Robert had retired from banking and discovered a passion for wildlife conservation, inspired, he claimed, by my photography. Barbara had channeled her organizational skills into volunteer work rather than family control. The true moment of transformation came when Laura and I decided to accept a 6-month assignment in Kenya documenting endangered species. It would mean taking Emma with us to Africa, a decision the old Barbara would have fought tooth and nail. When we told them over dinner, Barbara was quiet for a moment, then asked, "What can we do to help you prepare? That's a big adventure for all of you." No arguments, no guilt trips, no passive-aggressive comments, just support. Later, as Robert and I were washing dishes, he said, "I'm proud of you both. This is an incredible opportunity, and Emma will have experiences most children can only dream about." "Thank you for understanding," I replied. 2 years ago, I wouldn't have supported this, he admitted. I would have seen only the risks, not the rewards. But I've learned something important from you, Daniel. Life isn't just about financial security and conventional success. It's about following your passion and creating something meaningful. As we prepared for our journey, Barbara helped in practical ways, researching pediatricians in Nairobi, organizing Emma's vaccination schedule, helping Laura pack appropriate clothes. Not once did she suggest we reconsider or leave Emma with them. The night before our departure, Barbara pulled me aside. "I need to say something, Daniel. Thank you for not giving up on us, especially on me. When you switched those glasses that night, you could have exposed me immediately, destroyed my relationship with Laura forever. You would have been justified, but you gave me a chance to confront my demons, to become a better person. You helped save our family." I thought about how far we'd come, from a mother-in-law who tried to drug me to someone I could actually trust with my child. "We saved it together," I replied. Sometimes the most unexpected journeys lead to the most meaningful destinations. And sometimes, the people who seem least capable of change surprise you the most when given the right motivation and support. As our plane took off the next day, with Emma babbling happily in Laura's lap, I thought about how differently this story could have ended. One switched glass had set in motion a chain of events that ultimately healed rather than destroyed a family. The greatest revenge isn't in exposing someone's worst moments. It's in giving them the opportunity to become better than they ever thought possible. Have you ever found that forgiveness can be more powerful than revenge?